My name is Madeline, and 12 years ago, I met James at a business networking event. He was a senior manager at a trading company, charming and intelligent, with kind eyes that made me feel at ease. What really won me over, though, was how he talked about his 13-year-old daughter, Sarah. The love in his voice when he mentioned her name was unmistakable. I'd built my chain of beauty salons from the ground up, and success had brought me everything except what I wanted most, a family. I couldn't have children of my own, a fact I'd learned to live with, but meeting James and Sarah felt like a second chance. We got married 6 months later, and they moved into my house. The income difference between James and me was substantial. I made several times what he did, but it never bothered me. Love isn't about money, and I was just happy to finally have the family I'd always wanted. When Sarah turned 16, I bought her first car, a safe, reliable model that made her squeal with joy. "This is really mine," she'd asked, tears in her eyes as she hugged me. "Thank you, Madeline. You're the best." 2 years later, when college acceptance letters started arriving, I didn't hesitate to offer to pay for her education. It wasn't Harvard, but it was a good school, and Sarah was thrilled. Those early years were beautiful. We were happy. I had everything I'd ever wanted, a loving husband, a stepdaughter who seemed to appreciate me, and a home filled with laughter. Sarah even stayed with us after college, saying she wanted to save money while starting her career. I'll never forget that spring evening when Sarah came home practically glowing with excitement. She'd been dating Michael for 2 years, and I knew him well, a decent young man who worked as a software engineer and treated her like a princess. Still, when she burst through the door waving her left hand with a diamond ring sparkling on it, I was genuinely surprised. "Dad, Madeline," he proposed, she squealed, bouncing on her toes like she was 16 again instead of 25. "We're getting married." James jumped up to hug her while I stood there grinning like an idiot. This was exactly the kind of family moment I'd always dreamed of having. Michael came over later that evening, and we opened a bottle of champagne I'd been saving for a special occasion. "I know this is a big ask," Sarah said, looking nervous as she played with her engagement ring. "But we've been looking at venues and everything, and—" "How much?" I asked, already reaching for my phone to check my accounts. "Well, with everything included, around 150,000, she said quietly, then rushed to add, "But of course, we don't expect." "Done," I interrupted, smiling. "I'll set up an account tomorrow that you can access for all the wedding expenses." The look of relief and joy on her face made every penny worth it. "Really? Oh my God, Madeline, thank you so much." She threw her arms around me, and I hugged her back tightly, remembering that teenage girl who'd first welcomed me into her life. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of excitement. Sarah included me in everything at first. We'd sit at the kitchen table late into the night, looking at wedding magazines and Pinterest boards. She'd text me pictures of dresses she was considering and ask my opinion on color schemes. "What do you think about these flowers?" she'd ask, showing me photos of elaborate bouquets. "Too much? Not enough?" "I love the pink peonies," I'd say, and she'd make notes in her wedding planner. She found her dream dress, a stunning designer gown that cost more than my first car, and I didn't even blink at the price tag. The way her eyes lit up when she tried it on was worth every cent. The venue she chose was spectacular, an elegant historic hotel downtown with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. The menu she selected featured premium dishes that would impress any food critic. I transferred the money as promised, and Sarah dove into the planning with enthusiasm. But then, about 2 months into the planning, something shifted. The detailed updates became shorter, vaguer. Instead of our long planning sessions, she'd rush through dinner and disappear into her room or go to Michael's place. "How's the planning going?" I'd ask. "Fine," she'd reply, barely looking up from her phone. "Everything's on track." When I'd try to get more specific details, she'd give non-committal answers. "Oh, just finalizing some things." Or, "Don't worry, it's all under control." I told myself not to be hurt by this gradual exclusion. After all, planning a wedding is stressful, and she was probably just overwhelmed. Maybe she needed some space to make her own decisions. I remembered being young and wanting to prove I could handle things on my own. James noticed my concern one night as we got ready for bed. "Everything okay?" he asked. "You seem worried." "I'm probably just being silly," I said, trying to smile. "It's just, Sarah seems different lately. More distant." "She's just busy with the wedding," he assured me, kissing my forehead. "You know how it is, so many details to manage. Try not to worry." I nodded and tried to push my concerns aside. But there was a nagging feeling in my gut that something wasn't quite right. The happy bubble we'd been living in felt like it was starting to develop tiny cracks, and I couldn't shake the sensation that this was just the beginning. As the weeks passed, I decided to take a more active role in the wedding planning again. One morning, over coffee, I casually brought up something that had been on my mind. "Sarah, honey, I was wondering about the guest list," I said, watching her scroll through her phone. "Have you figured out how many people you're inviting?" She looked up briefly. "Oh, yeah, we're keeping it small, about 50 people." "That's nice, intimate," I nodded, then added, "I'd love to include my parents and my sister. They've always adored you, and they'd be thrilled to be there." The change in Sarah's expression was immediate and startling. Her face hardened, and she put down her phone with deliberate slowness. "Actually, we're only inviting close relatives and friends. This is supposed to be a really personal celebration. I don't want to include people who aren't, actually family." The words hit me like ice water. After 12 years, after everything we'd shared, my family wasn't actually family to her? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice gentle. "Sarah, I understand wanting to keep things intimate, but my parents have known you since you were 13. They'd been to every one of your birthdays, your graduation." I paused, then added quietly, "and I am paying for the entire wedding. Surely we can make an exception for 3 people who care about you." Her face immediately twisted into a pout, and I could see the anger flash in her eyes at the mention of money. She pushed her chair back from the table with more force than necessary. "Fine," she snapped. "I'll send invitations to your mom and sister. Happy now?" Before I could respond, she grabbed her phone and stormed out of the kitchen. I heard the front door slam a few minutes later. That evening, James came into our bedroom with that look on his face, the one that told me I wasn't going to like what he had to say. "We need to talk about what happened with Sarah today," he began, sitting on the edge of our bed. "Okay," I said, putting down my book. "What about it?" "She called me crying earlier. Said you were really rude to her about the guest list. She's staying at Michael's tonight because she's so upset." I stared at him in disbelief. "Rude to her?" "James, she told me my family wasn't welcome at her wedding, a wedding I'm paying for, by the way. And I stayed completely calm when I talked to her about it." "I know, but maybe you could be a little more gentle with her," he suggested. "She's under a lot of stress with the wedding planning." I explained exactly what had happened, word for word, and I could see him processing it. He ran his hand through his hair, something he always did when he was troubled. "Okay," he finally said. "I see what you mean. I'll talk to her about it tomorrow." The next 2 weeks passed in an uneasy peace. Sarah had returned home and was acting as if nothing had happened, chattering about wedding details over breakfast and asking my opinion about centerpieces again. But something felt off, like the calm before a storm. Then came the bombshell at dinner. "So," Sarah said, pushing her pasta around her plate, "Mom found out about the wedding. She's back in town." I nearly choked on my wine. James's fork clattered against his plate. In 12 years, Sarah's mother, Linda, had barely been mentioned in our house. I knew the basics. She'd had a drinking problem, which led to the divorce, then moved to Arizona and essentially abandoned Sarah. No birthday cards, no Christmas calls, nothing. "She really wants to be involved in the wedding planning," Sarah continued, her voice bright with an enthusiasm I couldn't understand. "Actually, I invited her over for dinner this weekend." Here. My hand tightened around my wine glass. This was my house, the house I'd bought with my own money, the house where I'd created a home for us all. The proper thing would have been for Sarah to ask permission before inviting someone over, especially someone with Linda's history. But I remembered the guest list argument and bit my tongue. One more confrontation wasn't worth it. James sat there silently, suddenly very interested in his pasta. That weekend, I spent hours preparing a perfect dinner: herb-crusted rack of lamb, roasted vegetables, homemade bread. I wanted everything to be flawless, though I couldn't explain why I felt the need to impress a woman who'd abandoned her daughter. Linda arrived exactly 30 minutes late. She was tall and blonde like Sarah, but with hard edges where Sarah was soft. Her eyes scanned every inch of my home as she walked in, lingering on the artwork, the furniture, the view from the windows. I recognized the look, envy poorly disguised as appraisal. "What a large house," she said, emphasizing large in a way that made it sound like an insult. Dinner started pleasantly enough, but it didn't stay that way. Linda took a bite of the lamb and pursed her lips. She said, cutting another piece with deliberate slowness. "You know, I always made this with rosemary and garlic. It really brings out the flavor better. Sarah used to love it when I made it." I took a sip of wine and said nothing. "And these vegetables," she continued, pushing them around her plate. "They're a bit overdone, aren't they? I always found that keeping them crispy makes them so much more appetizing." With each criticism, I waited for James to say something, anything. He'd been married to this woman, he knew exactly who she was and what she was doing. But he kept his eyes on his plate, cutting his food into smaller and smaller pieces. I sat there, watching this woman criticize my cooking in my own home, while my husband stayed silent and my stepdaughter beamed at her long-lost mother as if she'd hung the moon. Something inside me shifted, hardened. As dinner wound down, Linda dabbed her lips with her napkin and turned to Sarah. "So, honey, tell me about the venue. Which hotel did you pick?" "The Grand Morrison downtown," Sarah replied, brightening at the change of subject. "It's beautiful, Mom. They have these amazing crystal chandeliers and—" "The Grand Morrison?" Linda's face wrinkled with distaste. "Oh, sweetie, you can't have your wedding there. That place is so basic. Now, the Belmont Plaza, that's where you should be having it. Much more prestigious." I gripped my fork tighter, knowing the Belmont Plaza cost nearly twice what we were already spending. "The wedding we're planning isn't exactly cheap," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "The Grand Morrison is a lovely venue." Linda's eyes narrowed. "Well, you can't cut corners on your only daughter's wedding. It's the most important day of her life." Something inside me snapped. 12 years of love, support, and financial sacrifice reduced to cutting corners by a woman who hadn't sent her daughter so much as a birthday card. "If you're so concerned about the venue," I said, meeting her gaze directly, "feel free to pay for the Belmont Plaza yourself. Since I'm the one covering the entire $150,000 for this wedding, I think the Grand Morrison will do just fine." The silence that followed was deafening. Linda's face flushed red. She stood up so quickly, her chair scraped against the floor. "I can see I'm not welcome here," she announced, grabbing her purse. "Sarah, call me tomorrow, honey." She stormed out, the front door slamming behind her. Sarah whirled on me, her face contorted with rage. "How dare you?" she screamed. "How dare you throw the money in Mom's face like that? You're cruel and greedy, and you've ruined everything." She ran upstairs, and I heard her door slam too. I sat there, stunned, as James helped himself to another glass of wine. Later that night, he came to our bedroom looking stern. "You need to apologize to Sarah," he said. "What you said to Linda was completely out of line." I stared at him in disbelief. "Apologize? For what? Telling the truth? Your ex-wife came into my house, criticized everything I did, and then suggested I was being cheap about a wedding I'm paying for entirely on my own. Still, you didn't have to embarrass her like that. And now Sarah's upset." "I'm not apologizing," I said firmly. Not this time. He grabbed his pillow. Fine. I'll sleep in the living room until you come to your senses. The next morning, my phone rang while I was making coffee alone in the kitchen. It was my mother. "Maddie, honey," she said, her voice concerned. "I wanted to ask you about Sarah's wedding. What's the date and venue?" "Dad and I haven't received an invitation yet, and neither has Jenny. I thought they must have gotten lost in the mail." I sat at the kitchen counter for hours after my mother's call, my coffee going cold beside me. The morning sun crawled across the floor as I waited, my anger building with each passing minute. Around 11, I heard Sarah's key in the lock. She'd been out since breakfast, probably with Linda. "Sarah," I called out, my voice steady, despite the rage simmering inside me. "We need to talk." She walked into the kitchen, still wearing yesterday's clothes. "What is it?" she asked, not quite meeting my eyes. "I just got a call from my mother," I said, watching her face carefully. She was asking about the wedding invitations, the ones that apparently never arrived. Sarah's expression hardened, a look I'd never seen before crossing her face. She lifted her chin defiantly. "I'm not inviting them." "Excuse me?" "I'm not inviting strangers to my wedding," she said, each word deliberately cruel. The word strangers hit me like a physical blow. My parents had been at every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone for 12 years. My sister had helped Sarah prepare for her college interviews. "Strangers?" "That's wrong, Sarah," I said, fighting to keep my voice level. "And it's ugly. These people have loved you and supported you for years." She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound I'd never heard from her before. "You want to talk about ugly? After what you did to my mom last night?" Her eyes flashed with anger. "Actually, you know what? I don't want you at my wedding either." Time seemed to stop. The kitchen fell silent except for the quiet hum of the refrigerator. 12 years of love, support, and sacrifice reduced to this moment. "Let me make sure I understand," I said slowly. "You don't want me, the person paying for your entire wedding, to attend?" "That's right," she said, lifting her chin higher. I felt an odd sense of calm wash over me. All the hurt and anger of the past few weeks crystallized into perfect clarity. I smiled, which seemed to unnerve her slightly. "That's fine," I said, my voice pleasantly light. "I won't come to your wedding." Without another word, I walked upstairs to my home office. My hands didn't shake at all as I logged into my banking app and revoked Sarah's access to the wedding account. It took less than a minute, just a few clicks to end what had taken 12 years to build. Next, I called Robert, the wedding planner. He answered on the second ring. "Robert, this is Madeline Harrison. I need you to cancel all the wedding arrangements." Excuse me?" He sounded bewildered. "Is everything all right?" "No, it's not," I said honestly. "But it will be. Please cancel everything and process the refund to my account." The Grand Morrison was my next call. The events manager was apologetic but firm. They couldn't refund the deposit for the food and beverages that had already been ordered. It was a few $1,000s lost, but at that moment, it felt like money well spent. That evening, the house was silent. James was still sleeping in the living room. I could hear him shifting on the couch as I got ready for bed. As I lay there alone in the dark, I realized I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt free. The next morning, I took my time getting dressed. I chose my favorite blue silk blouse and pearl earrings, armor, for what I knew would be a difficult day. When I finally went downstairs for breakfast, the storm broke immediately. Sarah and James were already at the kitchen table, clearly waiting for me. The moment I appeared, Sarah leaped to her feet, her face red with fury. "What did you do?" she screamed. "How dare you cancel my wedding? How dare you block my access to the account? That money was for my wedding." I poured myself a cup of coffee, my hands steady. "I'm not going to sponsor a wedding I'm not invited to," I said simply, taking a sip. "You can't do this." Sarah's voice rose higher, tears starting to stream down her face. You've ruined everything. The venue, the flowers, the dress, it's all gone. I set my coffee cup down carefully. Actually, I can do this, and I did. Why don't you ask the people you actually want at your wedding to pay for it? Sarah's face crumpled. She let out a horrible, gasping sob and ran from the kitchen. Her footsteps thundered up the stairs, followed by the slam of her bedroom door. James stood up slowly, his face dark with anger. Fix this, he growled. Right now. Call everyone back, reopen the account, and arrange everything again. Or I'll file for divorce. The threat hung in the air between us. 12 years of marriage reduced to this moment. I looked at the man I'd loved, really looked at him, and wondered how I'd never seen this side of him before. Okay, I said calmly. File for divorce, I'm not against it. The color drained from his face. He clearly hadn't expected this response. Madeline, you can't be serious. I am, and since this is my house, I'd like you and Sarah to leave by tomorrow. His anger deflated like a punctured balloon. Look, he said, his tone suddenly conciliatory, I overreacted. We need to talk about this, think it through. I've already thought it through, I interrupted. I'm done living with people who don't appreciate or respect me. I'm done trying to buy love. The rest of the day passed in a blur of slammed doors and muffled arguments upstairs. At exactly 7 that evening, James and Sarah appeared in the foyer with their suitcases. Sarah's eyes were red and puffy from crying. I never thought you could be so cruel, she spat. I felt a laugh bubble up inside me, a genuine laugh of disbelief. Cruel? I paid for your clothes, your car, your education. I gave you a home, loved you like my own daughter, and was ready to spend $150,000 on your wedding. And you have the nerve to call me cruel, because I won't let you treat me like dirt. The door closed behind them with a quiet click, so much gentler than all the angry slams of the past few days. I stood in my foyer, and listened to the silence of my house. The house felt different after they left, lighter somehow, as if a weight I hadn't known I was carrying had been lifted. I spent the first few days reorganizing spaces, reclaiming rooms that had slowly become filled with Sarah's things over the years. It was therapeutic, like cleaning out an old wound. Then came the message from Michael's mother. It popped up on my social media one evening while I was enjoying a glass of wine on my patio. I hope you realize what you've done, the message read. This wedding could fail entirely because of your actions. How can you be so heartless? I took my time responding, choosing my words carefully. I'm not heartless, I wrote back. I'm just done being disrespected. I won't pay for a wedding I'm not even invited to. If you're so concerned about the wedding's success, feel free to pay for it yourself. She read the message, but never replied. I imagined her sitting there, probably as shocked as James had been that I wouldn't back down. It's funny how people react when you finally stand up for yourself, like they can't quite believe you've stopped playing by their rules. I contacted my lawyer the next day. She'd helped me draft the prenup 12 years ago, and now she'd helped me end the marriage it had protected. The divorce papers were ready within a week. When I called James to tell him they were ready, he tried his old tactics again. Maddie, please, he said, his voice soft and pleading, the voice that used to make my heart melt. We can start over. We can fix this. I hung up. He came to get the papers the next morning. He looked older somehow, tired. The confident man who'd threatened me with divorce was gone, replaced by someone who seemed lost. Sarah's been crying nonstop, he said, standing in my foyer, no longer our foyer. The wedding's going to be at City Hall now. No reception, no flowers, no fancy dress. Just a basic ceremony. I shrugged, remembering all the tears I'd shed over their betrayal. That's not my problem. How can you be so cold about this? It's not cold, James. It's just not my responsibility anymore. He took the papers and left. I watched him walk to his car, the car I'd bought him, and drive away. It felt final, but not sad. Just finished. The divorce was completed 2 months later. The prenup made everything simple. He couldn't touch my house, my business, or any of my assets. Sometimes I wondered if he'd ever really read that document, if he'd understood what it meant when he signed it 12 years ago. It didn't matter now. People ask me sometimes if I know how Sarah's wedding went. If she wore the dress she'd chosen, if Linda was there, if it was everything she'd dreamed of. I honestly don't know. I blocked them all on social media, changed my phone number, moved on with my life. What I do know is this: you can't buy love. Not real love, anyway. You can't purchase respect or gratitude or loyalty. I spent 12 years trying to build a family with my checkbook, and in the end, all it got me was a front row seat to watch that family choose someone else over me. But here's the thing about endings: they're also beginnings. My house is peaceful now. My business is thriving. And when I sit in my garden with my morning coffee, watching the sun rise over my flowers, I don't feel lonely. I feel free.
Hey, where are you? What are you doing? My mom is in trouble. The voice on the answering machine belonged to my husband. My mother-in-law had collapsed and needed to be rushed to the hospital by ambulance. As I prepared for her hospitalization by opening the wardrobe in her room, I stumbled upon an unbelievable picture of my husband and sister-in-law. The sight of the photo left me in shock, and I fled to my parents' house in a daze. 3 years had passed since I met my husband, but it felt like I had been deceived for a long time. He didn't love me, he just wanted a wife. I couldn't forgive him, and I decided to divorce him. My name is Sarah. I'm 32 years old, and I work at a beauty salon. 4 years ago, I was in a hurry to get married as my friends and colleagues were tying the knot one after another. I wanted to marry before I turned 30. Listening to my married friends talk about their husbands and children made me feel envious and impatient. Even though I smiled and listened, I often cried on my way home, feeling gloomy and left out. With only 2 years left in my 20s, I decided to fully commit to finding a marriage partner. I tried everything: dating apps, marriage activity parties, but finding the right person was tough. The men I liked weren't interested in marriage, and I couldn't seem to find anyone suitable. I didn't think my standards were too high, but nothing worked out. Desperate, I registered with a marriage agency despite the cost. I hoped to meet someone genuinely interested in marriage. That's when I met Ken. He was 5 years older than me, refreshingly handsome, and worked at a prestigious company. From the moment I saw his profile, I felt he was the one. Ken wanted to get married as soon as possible, just like me. When we first met, he was exactly as his profile described: polite and nice. I shared with him that I had little education or work experience but enjoyed housework. Ken smiled and said he was too busy with work to take care of the house. So he wanted to marry someone like me. I was flattered and thrilled. Ken lived alone with his mother, who had a chronic illness, and he explained that she would need to live with us if we got married. I was surprised but appreciated his honesty. Working in a beauty salon, I was used to dealing with older women and felt confident about living with my future mother-in-law. I wanted to know Ken better, and as we went on more dates, my feelings for him deepened. Eventually, I met Ken's mother. She was petite and charming, and we hit it off immediately, sharing a love for sweets. "Sarah, you're too good for Ken. You don't need to worry about living with me. I have a chronic illness, but I don't need nursing care. Next time, let's go out for parfait instead of this nice restaurant," she said warmly. Living with her no longer seemed daunting. Ken and I began dating with marriage in mind, and despite his busy schedule, he always made time for me. We traveled together and spent quality time with each other. My impression of him remained positive. He was as refreshing as when we first met. Ken's mother and I became good friends, often going out for sweets together. Despite her illness, she was full of energy. Sometimes, I even forgot the age difference between us. She confided in me about her past, including her 2 divorces and the challenges she faced. After dating for about 6 months, Ken and I got married. I was thrilled that we managed to get married just before we turned 30. I was genuinely happy that all my hard work on marriage activities had paid off. We quickly registered our marriage and started preparing to live together. Then, one day, my husband told me there was something important he needed to discuss with me. I felt a bit uneasy, wondering what it could be. "I never told you this before, but I have a sister," Hannah, who was not related to me by blood, he said. At first, I didn't quite understand. Hannah was my husband's stepfather's daughter. My mother-in-law and father-in-law had divorced 5 years ago, and my father-in-law had since passed away. Hannah had no family. My mother-in-law and Hannah didn't get along well, so she never visited. However, my husband was worried about Hannah, who had no family, and kept in touch with her. I'd like to invite her to the wedding, but my mom is against it. Still, Hannah means a lot to me, and I want you to meet her at least once, he explained. I was curious about what kind of person my kind mother-in-law could dislike so much. But seeing how much my husband cared about his family, I agreed to meet her. Nice to meet you, Sarah. I'm Hannah, she said. She was beautiful and had a flamboyant look. She worked at a bar, and I couldn't understand why my mother-in-law disliked her. Hannah was pleasant and made our meeting enjoyable. When Ken was in middle school and I was in high school, we started living together. Isn't it like a comic book, suddenly becoming a family? She said, reminiscing about their past. Ken made fast-paced quips about her stories, and they seemed like a perfect pair, almost like a couple. It was clear she was dear to my husband. Sarah, I'm sorry I couldn't make it to your wedding. Be a good wife, Hannah said as we parted. Don't tell my mother about today. If she gets angry, it'll be a pain in the butt, Ken said on the way home. I didn't know the details of the conflict between my mother-in-law and Hannah, but I decided it was none of my business. I kept the meeting to myself. Life started for the three of us. Ken was busy with work and often came home late. On his days off, we would sometimes go out with my mother-in-law. I was also working, so I did the housework with my mother-in-law's help, and we often went out for sweets or to see a movie together. By all accounts, we were a happy family. However, I did worry about my mother-in-law because sometimes, when she wasn't feeling well, she would sleep all day. I tried to keep in touch with her frequently while I was at work. The only thing that bothered me was that Ken was always on his phone. He was constantly doing something on it, even bringing it into the bath. Initially, I thought he was just addicted to games, but it became so frequent that I started to worry. One time, he called to say he was heading out, and I called him back because I wanted him to get me something at the convenience store. His phone was engaged the whole time, and I couldn't get through to him. When he came back, I confronted him. Ken, I've been calling you all day, I said. Sorry, I got a call from the company, he replied. We had just gotten married, and I didn't think it was possible he was cheating on me, but I couldn't help being curious. My mother-in-law didn't seem bothered by his behavior, treating it as normal. One day, I felt guilty but glanced at the screen of his phone. I saw that he was texting someone. It seemed they talked often. One night, Ken came home late, and I couldn't help but wonder who he was talking to in the middle of the night. Hey, who do you always talk with in the middle of the night? I asked, trying to sound playful after my mother-in-law had gone to bed. Ken seemed unbothered by my question. It's my sister. Did you suspect me of cheating on you? Don't worry, he laughed. I laughed along with him, feeling a bit foolish for worrying so much. From then on, I didn't mind how much he was on his phone, but he was always busy with work and didn't have much time for me. I felt a bit uncomfortable with him spending nearly all his free time talking to Hannah. 2 years later, life with the three of us was going well. My mother-in-law and I often visited the sweet shop whenever it opened. Today's pancakes might be the best pancakes of all time, she said. I was thinking the same thing. I can't wait to try them with you, I replied. To any outsider, we looked like mother and daughter. I never felt self-conscious about living together, and I loved my mother-in-law. Ken was still busy with work and came home late, always glued to his phone. I had gotten used to it and didn't say anything. I wasn't asking him to do the housework, but I did have small complaints. If he had time to contact Hannah, he could at least put his socks in the laundry. However, when Ken had time off, he made sure to spend it with us, never forgetting to celebrate our wedding anniversary or my birthday. Despite the small complaints, we were a happy family. Then one day, my mother-in-law was sick and spent the day in bed. I was worried and checked on her several times. She seemed to sleep quietly during the day, but in the evening, she complained, Sarah, I'm in pain. She was breathing hard. I called an ambulance in a hurry, and it arrived immediately. I rode with her to the hospital. I was relieved to find out that she wasn't in critical condition. I called Ken to let him know she would be hospitalized for a while. He left work early to come to the hospital. and I went home to pack for a few days, stay with her. When I returned home, I opened the wardrobe in my mother-in-law's room to find her insurance card and personal seal. She had said they were in the top drawer, but I couldn't find them. So I opened the bottom drawer and found a small box. Thinking it might contain the insurance card, I opened it and found a large number of photographs inside. I was so shocked when I saw them that I went to the bathroom and threw up. There were pictures of Ken and Hannah, not as brother and sister, but as lovers. They were holding hands and kissing. Feeling sick, I closed the box. It was painful to think about how close Ken had been with Hannah all this time. My mind went blank, and the next thing I knew, I was running to my parents' house with the box in my arms. At my parents' house, my mother was surprised to see me. When she saw what was in the box, she hugged me. After crying for a while, I calmed down. "These pictures of Ken and another woman, is he cheating?" she asked. My mother was shocked when I told her it was Hannah, and that the photos were in my mother-in-law's wardrobe. I hadn't even told my mother about my sister-in-law. "I can't live with him anymore," I said. "Of course you can't live with him. I can't allow it," my mother replied, angry as well. When I looked at my phone, I saw a lot of missed calls from Ken and a voicemail message that said, "Hey, where are you? What are you doing? Your mother is in trouble." The message was angry. I thought, I'm the one who should be angry, I turned off my phone because talking about it would remind me of the pictures and make me sick. The next day, out of the goodness of my heart, I contacted him. "There's something I need to talk to you about this evening. I'll be there with my mother, so please call Hannah," I told him. "Thank goodness she's alive. What were you going to say when my mother was in trouble?" He started blabbing on and on. "Please do. I'll see you tonight," I said and hung up the phone. I went to my mother-in-law's hospital room. She looked at me happily and called my name. "I'm sorry you're not feeling well, mother-in-law, but I need to hear the truth," I said, opening the box I found in her wardrobe and showing it to her, her eyes filled with tears. "Sarah, I am so sorry," she began. "Hannah is the stepdaughter of my ex-husband. 5 years ago, she told me they were lovers, even though they're not related by blood. They're both my children, and I told them I couldn't allow it. Hannah got angry and left the house, and I never saw her again. I should have told you, but those are old photos. Don't worry, I don't even know what Hannah is doing now, and I'm sure she's not in contact with Ken," she said. Her eyes were sincere, she didn't seem to be lying. "Ken is still in contact with Hannah. In fact, he introduced me to her once years ago," I replied. My mother-in-law shed another tear. "But you're already married," she said. "I'm sorry, you did nothing wrong, but I can't be a family with Ken anymore. I'm going to divorce him." "Don't apologize to me. It's my fault for not noticing." "I'm sorry," she said. I couldn't stop crying either. I left the hospital room and went to the house where my mother, Ken, and Hannah were waiting. When I arrived, they were all there. I sat down and immediately showed them the pictures. "You two are lovers, and I'm divorcing you," I declared. Ken didn't seem offended. "Oh yes, that's right. But as a family member and as a lover, they are two different things. We were happy as a family, weren't we? Mom was happy too. What's wrong with that? We don't have to get divorced," he said with his usual fresh smile. Hannah added, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but I have no intention of destroying your family. I don't think divorce is necessary." I trembled with anger. "Don't be silly. This is cheating. How can I be family with someone like that?" I yelled. "Well, don't be so loud. If you want a divorce, that's fine. I've done my duty as a family member. Since you're the one who initiated it, it's an amicable divorce," Ken said. "What? What's amicable about this? This is a huge betrayal. I'm going to charge both of you alimony." "Oh, okay, that's fine. I'll pay as much money as you want. In return, don't tell my mother. As for the reason for the divorce, let's just call it a personality conflict. I've already told your mother everything." She was crying. I told her we're getting a divorce. "What? Why would you do that?" Ken lost his composure and shouted. Hannah cried, "Why did you tell her?" "My lawyer will contact you about the alimony, so goodbye," I said, leaving the house with my mother. My mother hugged me. "You did a great job," she said. I cried loudly into her chest. Now I knew that Ken never cared about me. He just wanted a wife to reassure his mother. I wanted to marry him too, and maybe we were happy as a family. But I can't forgive myself for not knowing I had been betrayed since the beginning. I'm glad I realized it now and was able to get a divorce. Later, through my lawyer, the divorce was successfully finalized. I requested alimony from Ken and Hannah, but Hannah didn't have any money and was angry at Ken for only paying his share. Their relationship deteriorated, and they decided to separate. Hannah started working lunch and dinner shifts at the bar where she originally worked to pay the alimony. After she was discharged from the hospital, my mother-in-law was angry with Ken and told him that if he saw Hannah even once in the future, she would cut ties with him. My mother-in-law and I still keep in touch and occasionally go out for sweets. I'm relieved that she is out of the hospital and seems to be in good health. I now live with my parents and am busy preparing for the reopening of the beauty salon where I used to work. When things settle down a bit more, I'll start living alone again. I'm no longer envious when I hear about my friends who are married. Until the day comes when I meet someone wonderful again, I'll keep working hard. Hi, I'm Ella, and I'm 30 years old. There's a big change coming up in my life right now, but before I tell you about that, I want to share the events that led to this change. This story centers around two main characters, my husband Danny and my mother-in-law Kim. Danny and I met through a dating app. At the time, I wasn't interested in a relationship at all. I had been on so many dates that I had given up hope of ever finding someone to settle down with. But that changed when I met Danny. From our first text exchange, I knew there was something different about him. He asked interesting, non-intrusive questions and kept the conversation flowing effortlessly. We would text until the early hours of the morning because we always had so much to talk about. When we finally met in person, I was worried the spark we had over text would vanish and the date would be awkward. But as soon as we started talking, it felt just like it did over text. Our first date was followed by many more, where we spent hours together without realizing how much time had passed. After dating for around 2 years, we decided to throw caution to the wind and get married. It might seem like a short time to some, but when you know, you know. We both felt it in our souls that we were meant for each other. Our relationship had been the most amazing thing that had ever happened to me. I wasn't going to let that go. We had a small, intimate wedding with only those closest to us. Everything was perfect until the reception. Danny's mother, Kim, approached us. Although I was cautious, she seemed surprisingly nice, which was odd given her history of treating me poorly. We soon found out why she was being so nice. She tried to spill her wine on my dress to ruin it. Thankfully, Danny had quick reflexes and pulled me away before any wine touched my dress. We didn't confront her but quickly moved away and socialized with the rest of our guests. However, the night was somewhat ruined because we were paranoid that Kim would try to harm me again. You might be wondering why Kim tried to do that. Let me tell you about our complicated relationship. From the moment I met her, she seemed to hate me and made it abundantly clear. When Danny first introduced me to her, she loudly gasped and said my ugliness took her by surprise. While I knew I didn't fit conventional beauty standards, being called ugly outright was hurtful. During the rest of that meeting, she continued to insult me, and I didn't say a word back because who would confront their partner's parents? But Danny had my back. In the middle of that meal, he got up, paid for our portion, and we left. Kim didn't take that well and bombarded him with calls and messages. Danny made it clear to her that if she didn't respect me, he wouldn't stay in contact with her. I felt terrible about what I was doing to Danny's relationship with his mom. They had been very close, and she had single-handedly raised him. I had a huge breakdown about it, and Danny was there for me. Did I actually do something wrong to your mother? Did I say something I shouldn't have? Did I dress wrong? I asked him. No, darling, not at all. I don't even know why she's behaving this way, he replied. I wouldn't mind her treating me this way, but it's affecting your relationship with her, and I don't like that, I said. Listen to me, Ella. Unless you actually did something wrong, I don't see any reason why I should continue to be nice to my mother, he reassured me. But she's your only family. You can't let me get in between that. You'll be my new family then. My mother needs to apologize for what she did, and only then will I be nice to her. You don't have to worry about a thing. Thank you so much for being on my side in all this, Danny. Of course, honey. I love you, and you've been nothing but super nice about this whole thing. But you need to stop thinking that you're the one causing all this. This is just bringing out my mother's true colors, and I'm not liking what I'm seeing. It was really comforting to have Danny on my side. He reassured me every time he and Kim fought about their lack of communication. Kim's hatred for me only grew over the next few years. Every time we met, which was only on holidays, she tried to hurt me. Danny always stood between us. But that never stopped her from trying to get to me. Whenever Danny and I tried to talk to her, she lashed out, accusing us of treating her like she was crazy. We always spoke to her calmly and gently, but she got aggressive very quickly. She never failed to tell us what she thought of me, believing I was brainwashing Danny into pulling away from her. She even thought I was blackmailing him to leave her so I could have him all to myself. Of course, Danny never stayed quiet about it. He constantly fought for me, telling her on many occasions to leave us alone. He even blocked her on every platform so she couldn't contact us. But Kim was relentless. She showed up at our house and demanded that Danny speak to her. We had a huge argument at our doorstep, which escalated into a screaming match between Danny and Kim, loud enough that our neighbors started tuning in. I calmly and politely asked Kim to leave and suggested we talk about it over the phone once we'd all calmed down. Instead of listening, she shoved me aside forcefully and told me to shut up. Danny saw red and called the police, asking them to escort her off our property because she refused to leave. Kim cried and screamed, not expecting Danny to call the cops on her. She tried to put her hands on me again, blaming me for changing Danny, but Danny stood between us, preventing her from harming me. The cops arrived just in time to see her trying to strangle me and quickly held her back and escorted her away. After that, Danny and I decided to file a restraining order against her. It was a tough decision, but we had no other choice. I tried my best to be civil with Kim, but she never wanted to be nice. We had the restraining order served to her, and she immediately called us. Danny put his phone on speaker mode so I could hear and contribute to the conversation if needed. "What is the meaning of this?" Kim demanded. "Meaning of what?" Danny replied. "This restraining order. Kim, you know you've been unnecessarily aggressive towards Ella these past few months. You've shown up at our doorstep and tried to assault her. So you're the reason my son sent me this restraining order. You poisoned his mind with all these awful things." "She did no such thing. You've been horrible to deal with," Danny interjected. "What kind of son is comfortable sending his own mother an order restricting her access to him?" Kim continued. "What kind of mother tries to strangle her son's wife?" Danny shot back. "Stay out of our lives, or I will make things worse for you. I'm sorry it has come to this, but if you change your behavior, we will rescind the order." Wow, you create the problem and then try to get all the recognition for solving it. I don't want any of your apologies. I will ruin you, just you wait and watch. "That's enough now. Goodbye," Danny said firmly. It was disappointing to hear Kim still be so rude. What would it take for her to learn to be nice? Every day, I couldn't help but wonder if I had done something to upset her. Danny and I had multiple conversations about it, going over every possibility, but she deemed me ugly within the first 5 seconds of meeting and proceeded to hate me ever since. Maybe she was upset that Danny had another woman in his life, which I could understand, given it had been just the two of them for a long time. But to actively try to hurt me and our relationship was neither okay nor normal. I suggested therapy to her on several occasions over the years, but she always said she was fine and that the only thing that would fix her was me getting out of her and Danny's life. Of course, there was no way I was leaving Danny's life, and even if I wanted to, he would never have let me leave for that reason. We tried our best to be civil with Kim, but it didn't work. She took to telling the rest of Danny's family about my supposed evil doings, and Danny ended up getting a lot of concerned calls. Even though Danny handled the situation, it surprised me how easily Kim managed to convince everyone of her beliefs. Either she was very influential in the family or she was just really good at lying. My bets were on the latter. After she received the restraining order, she stopped coming by our place, although I did catch her loitering just outside our house. She would just stand there and watch our house. Seeing someone just standing there and staring can be quite creepy. Danny and I called the police several times, but somehow she always managed to disappear before they arrived. Eventually, she stopped showing up, and we thought we were finally free. Then our mail began disappearing. Many things I ordered in letters from my family never arrived. Whenever I checked the mailbox, the mail was gone. It was really frustrating because I was missing out on beautiful letters from my family and none of my orders were being refunded, despite delivery confirmations. Danny and I suspected Kim was behind it. We knew she was bitter and angry with us. We didn't agree with her methods and didn't want to engage with her. If she thought this would get us to talk to her, she was wrong. Instead, we bought a noticeable camera and attached it to the mailbox with a note stating that the area was under surveillance. Sure enough, we saw Kim standing in her usual spot and staring at the house when we were at work. Then she approached the mailbox, read the note, and turned away. We didn't say anything because at least she seemed to take the note seriously. One day, I was at work when I got a call from Kim. She was blocked on my phone, but she called my company and had them get me on the line. I didn't even want to know how she found out where I worked because it would have only made me more paranoid. Hi, Ella. Kim, why are you calling me? Oh, I just wanted to let you know about something I did. Okay. These past few months, all I could think about was how much I hated you for ruining my relationship with my son. First of all, that's very unhealthy. Secondly, I didn't do any of that. You did that to yourself by hating me so much and trying to ruin your son's relationship because of that hatred. I'm not done, Ella. I really don't have time for this. Oh, you will definitely have time for this when I tell you what I did. Like I said, I was so consumed by my thoughts that one day it hit me. I didn't have to get near you to hurt you. Kim, what did you do? Nothing too big for me, really. I just happened to walk by your place when I saw your car parked by the sidewalk. I had my keys in my hand, and next thing I knew, I was scratching up your car real good like a mad person with them. Here, let me send you a couple of pictures. I was confused because from where I was sitting by the window, I could clearly see my car parked there. I knew that Danny wasn't home either, and we both had distinctly different cars. So if neither of our cars was there, whose car was it and why was it parked by our place? My questions were answered when I received the pictures Kim had emailed me. Considering she was blocked everywhere else, the car was indeed scratched up really well, but it wasn't mine. I took a closer look at the number plate and instantly recognized whose car it was. It belonged to Senator John. We had a senator who lived in our neighborhood, known for being able to get away with small things like bad parking. Although he was genuinely a nice guy, everyone liked him and no one complained. In fact, Danny and he were quite amicable. If there was one thing I knew about John, it was that he took his cars very seriously. That man never had a speck of dirt on his cars, and he had fired multiple people who washed them because they didn't clean them well enough. It was no surprise that he was going to lose his mind when he saw his car all scratched up. I was upset that Kim had gone so far, but I knew this was going to be her true learning moment. I took a couple of pictures of my car sitting in the parking lot and sent them to her. What? Cat got your tongue. I really don't know what to say. Kim, of course you don't. This is definitely beyond anything you could have imagined. I told you I would ruin you, and this is just the beginning. Oh, and listen, I hear the police coming down the street. I don't know how to tell you this, but that's not my car. What? Don't lie to me. If this is your way of trying to make me feel bad, it's not going to work. No, seriously, my car is parked at work. I took a couple of pictures and sent them to you. Why don't we take a look? But, whose car did I scratch? That would be the senator's car. Senator John, who, by the way, is very particular about his cars. What? Oh, Kim, if you wanted to cause me harm, the least you could have done was check whose car it was. What do I do? Face the consequences of your actions. Take care, Kim, goodbye. A part of me was excited to see what would happen to Kim. It brought me a certain level of satisfaction to hear her shiver as I told her whose car she had damaged. I immediately called Danny to tell him what had happened. While he was shocked and angry that she had even attempted to do something to me, he couldn't help but laugh at how things had turned out for her. By the time I was done with work, I had received a call from the police station requesting Danny and me to come down. At the station, we gave our statements, emphasizing that Kim had a vendetta against me and that we had a restraining order against her. It didn't help Kim's case that she was at the scene of the crime, even though she denied doing it. The police asked if we had any security cameras around our home, and I told them about the one attached to our mailbox. We reviewed the footage and surprise, it clearly showed Kim scratching the car like a mad person. Senator John was understandably furious. He'd approached Danny to have a word. Danny, I think you're a great guy, but this is inexcusable. I fully agree with you, John. I don't think what my mom did deserves any forgiveness. Really? I thought you tried to defend her. She tried to do that to my wife's car. I would have done the same thing you're doing if she had succeeded. Why would she even want to do that to Ella? She's a lovely woman. That's what I've tried to tell my mom, but she refuses to believe that my wife is anything less than evil. That's a shame. Even so, I'm really sorry for what my mother did. If you need me to cover any of the costs of the car, let me know. Nonsense. I approached you to tell you that I will be pursuing the highest punishment possible. She will pay for the damages. I just didn't want us to have any hard feelings. No hard feelings on my side, John. Do whatever you think is fair. Senator John was not lying when he said he would pursue maximum punishment. Over the next few weeks, Kim was taken to court, her behavior was reviewed, and many testimonies were given regarding her actions. In our state, damage to property worth over $500 results in a felony charge, along with a fine of above $1,000 and potential jail time. Finally, a verdict was given. Kim was charged with damage to personal property, fined $5,000, and sentenced to 2 years of jail time. Kim broke down and sobbed as the verdict was given. I once again felt a little bad, but Danny seemed relieved. For the next 2 years, we wouldn't have to deal with her harassment. Kim was escorted out of the courtroom and taken away. Senator John approached us again to apologize, but we assured him that he had only done what was right. Even though we were still worried about the future, once Kim finished her sentence, we felt a sense of peace. A few weeks after she began serving her time, she started sending us letters, detailing how she would make our lives hell once she got out. Neither Danny nor I wanted to continue dealing with her, so we made the tough decision to move out of our town. Thankfully, we both always wanted to leave but were too focused on our careers to make a change like that. As I'm writing this, Danny and I are packing our things to move to Europe, where we both have found better jobs. We're set to move in a month, and I cannot wait to start fresh. It's going to be hard to adjust, but it will all be worth it in the end. We haven't told anyone from either of our families that we're moving yet, and when we do, we won't give them any details. We can't have Kim finding out where we are and harassing us again. It was a tough call to leave everything we knew behind because of one person, but it's going to be the best decision we've made. I can already feel it. When I go to my eldest son Liam's house for Christmas, I am treated like a maid. Liam, my husband's child from a previous marriage, and I never got along well. Despite my efforts to be recognized as a mother, Liam never accepted me. He seemed happy to have someone to do all the housework, allowing him and his wife, Ava, to relax. Hearing them laugh about it left me feeling hopeless, but soon my sadness turned into anger. Why should I do housework for these people? I decided to stop and get my revenge. I'm Isabella, 81 years old, living alone. I got married at 37, having been all about work with no love life until my father introduced me to someone. My father, a wealthy man with many real estate properties, introduced me to a kind man from the real estate company he used. Although he had been divorced, I couldn't refuse because he was so kind. Concerned about my age and my parents' worries, I seized the opportunity. My husband was very friendly, and despite being surprised by his divorce, I admired how he was raising 2 young sons as a single father. We got along well and started dating, but we couldn't go on many dates because of his kids. Instead, I often cooked and ate with them at his house. His second son, Noah, quickly took a liking to me. He was a charming boy, always smiling and talking. However, Liam remained distant and barely responded when I talked to him. I persisted, hoping to build a relationship, and eventually married their father when I was 38. I tried to bond with the sons like a real mother, attending their sports events and cheering for them. Despite having no children of my own, I did my best as a parent. However, Liam's coldness persisted, and our relationship only worsened over time. Liam's rebellious behavior, failing a prestigious high school entrance exam, and subsequent delinquency created a rift between us. He would stay out late and come home in the middle of the night. "What are you doing?" "I'm worried." "At least call me," I would say. His response, "Shut up, don't talk to me like you're my mom." "You're not my parent," hurt deeply. Despite my best efforts, my feelings never reached him. My husband and Noah supported me, but Liam eventually stopped talking to me altogether. He left home for college and never returned, except for occasional contact through my husband or Noah. Both sons eventually moved on to college, jobs, and marriage, starting their own lives. I looked forward to enjoying life with just my husband, but fate was cruel. My husband died in a car accident hit by a drunk driver while returning from an outing with friends. The sudden loss was overwhelming. He was still so healthy. I wasn't ready to say goodbye. Even after the funeral, I couldn't stop crying. Noah kindly comforted me, saying, "Mom, if anything happens, rely on us. We're family." Liam also seemed concerned, helping with funeral arrangements. Despite being widowed, I felt comforted knowing I wasn't alone. Now living alone, the house felt too large without my husband. I considered getting a dog when Liam came to visit. "What's the matter?" "It's rare to see you," I said, surprised. We hadn't been in contact for decades, and the last time I saw him was at his wedding and then my husband's funeral. This was our first time talking alone, and I felt strangely nervous. "I have a favor to ask," Liam said. "A favor?" "I need to borrow some money." "What? Why?" "I was in a hit-and-run accident, and car repairs are expensive. This month has been tight." "That's terrible. How much do you need?" $20,000. "All right, I'll transfer it. Can you give me your account number?" "Really? Are you sure?" Liam was very surprised. $20,000 isn't a small amount, but helping a son in trouble is a parent's duty. I was happy that Liam finally relied on me. It's a parent's nature to want to help. We're family. You can always ask. "Thank you, Mom." It was the first time Liam called me Mom. I was overjoyed, feeling finally recognized as family. I thought my long struggles had paid off, but I was mistaken. In December, Liam called, "Mom, would you like to come over for Christmas?" "Really? Can I?" "Of course. Dad's gone and you're alone, right? You should spend it at our place." I was moved. The once rebellious Liam was now so considerate. I was deeply touched that Liam, who had been troublesome since high school, had grown so much. I eagerly accepted the invitation and prepared for my visit. I decided to stay from the 22nd to the 26th. I asked several times if it was too long, but he cheerfully assured me it was fine, so I took Liam at his word. Liam and Ava lived in an apartment. My first visit to Liam's place revealed a two-room home that felt cluttered despite its spaciousness. "So this is where you live. Is this the first time you've been here, Mom? It's been a while since you've seen Ava, right?" "Isabella, it's been since the funeral." Ava wore exaggerated false eyelashes and heavy makeup, looking much younger than her late 50s, more so than at the funeral. "Sorry to ask, but could you sleep in the living room? There's a sofa." "Oh, okay." I was surprised by this unexpected turn of events. The house was small and lacked guest blankets. Staying here for days, I couldn't hide my confusion. However, Liam and Ava seemed completely unbothered. Then Liam said to me, "We really wanted to eat your cooking, Isabella. Can you make something?" "I've heard Isabella's cooking is delicious, and I wanted to try it too." "Of course. Can I use whatever's in the fridge?" "Oh, right ahead." I was flustered to be asked to cook, but also thrilled. I never thought Liam would find my cooking delicious. Noah often praised it, but Liam had never said anything like that. Feeling happy that he wanted to eat my food again, I started cooking in the kitchen. There wasn't much in the fridge, so I made a simple pasta dish. "Delicious, Isabella. This is amazing. Please cook again tomorrow." "Yeah, this tastes. It's nostalgic." Liam and Ava ate happily. My mood was at its peak seeing their enjoyment. "Of course I'll cook tomorrow too. Is there anything in particular you want to eat?" "Chicken pot pie for tomorrow sounds good." "Chicken pot pie for dinner, right? How about pizza for lunch?" "Yeah, sounds great." No matter their age, to a parent, they are always children. I thought to do anything for Liam and Ava. But that night, I couldn't sleep due to the cold, feeling apprehensive about the days ahead. Waking up earlier than anyone, I started preparing breakfast and Liam and Ava soon followed, lured by the smell. Waking up to a ready breakfast is the best. "Thank you." They started their meal with smiles. "I'll go shopping today. It was cold last night. Can I buy a blanket?" "Sure, but we don't have cash on hand to give you." "That's okay, just do whatever." Liam's indifferent response bothered me, but I decided to go shopping after cleaning up breakfast. At a nearby shopping center, I bought a blanket and groceries. When I returned to the apartment, it was almost noon. Rushing home to prepare lunch, I heard Liam and Ava laughing. "Man, I didn't expect it to go this smoothly." "Right?" Let's get her to do other chores too. If we call her mom, she'll happily do it. Awesome. I was stunned to hear Liam's words. Such an idiot, happy to be treated as a mother. She's so eager, cooking and shopping since morning. Isn't that too much? If she's this soft for her son, I should have pretended to be a better son earlier. Right. Why didn't we go to Isabella for money sooner? She's not even working, just living off of Dad's inheritance. But there should be more inheritance left to squeeze out. Fantastic. I was astonished by Liam and Ava's words. Thinking they saw me as family was a complete misunderstanding. Liam was lying to get my husband's inheritance that I had received, taking advantage of my generosity. They invited me for Christmas to make me do housework. I was shocked. I thought we had finally become a family. I was the only one excited. Stunned, I was approached by Liam, who was heading to the bathroom. Surprised to see me, his face stiffened for a moment, but he quickly smiled. Mom, you're back. Must have been cold outside. I'm starving. Oh, you're back. Looking forward to lunch? They spoke to me as if they hadn't been overheard, buttering me up. Still confused, I followed Liam's lead to the kitchen and began preparing the meal. They didn't help, just started eating as soon as I served the food. Oh, this is delicious. Thank you, Mom. You've always been good at housework. Could you do the laundry and cleaning too? As you can see, Ava is not good at it. Yeah, it's hard keeping up with housework. When I worked part-time every day, the living room was cluttered with discarded clothes and empty plastic bottles. Far from sanitary. But now that you're off, you can do it, right? No, I really can't tidy up. Then let's do it together. Housework is easy once you get used to it. I have other things I want to do today. Mom, please, we're family, right? I just want to relax for Christmas. Liam spoke as if he were pleading, but I knew it was all an act. Why should I be the one to serve Liam and Ava? I couldn't accept it, yet if I refused now, it might create an unbridgeable gap between us. Maybe it's better if they're a bit selfish. Family, I decided to think that way. All right, but I'd like you to help me a little. Yes, thank you, Mom. In the end, they didn't help me at all with the housework. Instead, their behavior became increasingly arrogant. On Christmas Eve, Liam and Ava started drinking from noon, laughing stupidly while watching TV. Mom, is dinner ready yet? You're slow. Hey, did you wash this shirt yesterday? I wanted to wear it today. Mom, bring me a beer. I want some appetizers. They just lounge on the sofa, treating me like a servant. Why am I doing housework for these people? This isn't how families should treat each other. I had reached my limit and spoke to them. Why don't you stop drinking from noon and do some cleaning? I'm not the only one who should be doing housework. Drunk, Liam and Ava glared at me fiercely. What? Shut up, you old hag. Don't talk back. Right, tell her more. You should be grateful we're even acknowledging you as family, you blood-unrelated old woman. Show your gratitude through housework. It's better than being alone at home, right? Be thankful to us. Liam and Ava were completely mocking me. At that moment, my feelings for Liam disappeared. Why had I been so desperate to become family with such people? It's better to be alone than to be family with them. I don't want to live being looked down upon and used by these people. Unaware of my feelings, they continued to order me around. Can we order steak for Christmas? For Christmas, it's got to be appetizers, right? Order some appetizers and a roast turkey too, please. Without even looking at me, they spoke. I had an idea for a little revenge. Understood. I ordered appetizers and a roast turkey for delivery. Delivery culture has become widespread. Even high-end restaurants do it now. It's convenient to eat high-end appetizers and roast turkey at home. I ordered the most expensive ones, totaling $3,000, of course, cash on delivery. Then, leaving a note saying, I'm going back to my house, I returned to my own home. 5 hours later, back at my house, Liam called me as I was having a quiet dinner. Hello. Hey, why did you just leave? Seems he finally realized my revenge. I suppressed a smile and coughed to stay calm. Leave? I'm just going back to my own house. Why do I need permission? Don't talk back. More importantly, why are the appetizers and roast turkey $3,000? How can we afford that? It's from a nice place. I splurged for Christmas. Trying not to laugh, I spoke, and Liam and Ava's voices got louder. They must be red-faced and angry now. We didn't ask you to order something that expensive. Then you should have ordered it yourselves. I just ordered what I thought was good since you asked me to. Why would you order something so expensive, you idiot? What's wrong with your sense of money being so poor? Just come back and pay now. No way. It's dangerous for an old person to walk alone at night. I avoid going out after dark. What? Are you kidding? We're cutting ties with you. Okay. Yeah, isn't it sad to be alone on Christmas? We're kindly offering to spend it with you, and you waste our consideration. How rude. Liam and Ava threatened to cut ties with me, using the bond of family. In the past, their threats would have shaken me, but now it didn't matter. I'd rather be alone than spend time with people who use family affection to treat me like a servant. It's fine with me. Let's cut ties then. Are you sure? A poor person with only dad's inheritance? Don't come to us for money when you're in trouble. Even if you ask, we won't lend you any. Just so you know, we're not going to take care of you either. Noel doesn't live nearby, right? So if you need care, there's no one to look after you. Poor thing with no money and no one to care for you. Liam and Ava seemed to think they were in a position of advantage. They always misunderstood that I was poor in my old age, unable to work, and burdened with medical and care expenses. They thought threatening not to support me would make me comply. But it was irrelevant to me because I had enough money to give my son $20,000 just like that. Feeling sorry for them, I decided to tell Liam the truth before cutting ties. You keep saying I'm poor, but I'm not struggling with money. Huh? But you don't work, and you only have dad's inheritance, right? No, I have an income of about $5,000 a month besides the inheritance. $5,000 a month? How come? My father was a wealthy man and an only child. I inherited his real estate, sold some, but the remaining properties give me a steady rental income, so I'm set for my retirement. Rental income? We didn't know that. Well, of course, we hardly ever spoke, did we? True, Noel lives far away and can't take care of me in my old age, but with money, I can hire facilities or home health aides. I never intended to burden my sons with my care. I've saved enough to not be a burden in my old age. By the way, since we're cutting ties, I'll leave the inheritance only to Noah. I should write it in a will. Maybe it's time to start end-of-life planning. Wait, hold on. It's unfair for only Noah to inherit. I'm your son too. Huh? Aren't you a stranger now that we've cut ties? Who are you? Don't mess around. How can you call your son a stranger? Heartless. Huh. I thought the one who treated their mother like a servant and tried to get her inheritance was heartless. How do you know that? You thought I hadn't heard? Silly. Anyway, we're strangers now. Goodbye. Wait, I can't pay the $3,000. Help me. Liam kept shouting something, but I ignored it and hung up. Then I blocked his number. My revenge worked perfectly. Life isn't so sweet that you can dump chores on others and enjoy all the benefits. They should regret how they treated me a little. After that, I blocked Liam's number and got into a taxi. I knew Liam and Ava would soon come here. I couldn't have a peaceful Christmas if they did, so I decided to go to a distant cottage and spend Christmas alone. 5 days later, when I returned home, Liam and Ava were standing there. Oh, finally back. Hey, what are you doing in front of someone's house? Are you some kind of stalker? Pretending to be a stranger, I entered my house. Liam knelt down in desperation. We were wrong. Please, let's be a family again. Right, Liam was really worried these 5 days without contact with you, Isabella. He came here every day. Ava grabbed my hand, pleading. They seemed desperate. The moment they knew I had money, their attitude changed so drastically. It was disgusting. What exactly does being family mean to you? Family means helping each other out in times of trouble. Right? Sure, but I'm not in trouble. What if you get into trouble someday? It's comforting to have us around, Isabella. Then I'll contact you if I'm in trouble. As I tried to enter my house, they desperately tried to stop me. Wait, you might not be in trouble, but we are. In what kind of trouble? We're out of money. Really? That's tough. Work hard. Is that all? Shouldn't there be more of a reaction? Liam and Ava looked at me in surprise. They'd probably expected me to lend them money. I'm tired of hearing that kind of talk. It's cold, and I just wanted to go inside. That's all I was thinking about. We have debts. The income from our jobs is so little. I'm supporting the household with my part-time job too, but the debt isn't decreasing. Please help us. Aren't you our mother?" Their words had no effect on me. "If you have debts, why are you taking time off for Christmas? Huh? Isn't it normal to take a break on Christmas? Aren't wages usually higher during events like Christmas? And you think you can enjoy a leisurely Christmas break with debts? You probably thought you'd get money by saying family and son again, right? That's not it. Then earn it desperately. You're in your 50s, still of an age to earn. If you're desperate enough, you can repay your debts. It's impossible. We can't just. Stop being so dependent. It's embarrassing at over 50. As a family, I'm telling you, you're too reliant on others, only thinking about taking the easy way out." Liam and Ava probably didn't expect to be lectured by me. They were wide-eyed in surprise. "You can't go on like this. As a family, I care about you, so I'll be strict. I won't provide any financial support from now on." "What? Earn your own money." Ignoring the speechless Liam and Ava, I entered my house. A parent isn't just there to spoil their children. As a parent, I believe it's my role to guide them on the right path, even if it means being tough. I've resolved not to indulge Liam just because he's family. Afterward, I received no contact from Liam. I heard from Noah that Liam had gotten into gambling and debt. After being rejected by me, he went to Noah for money but was firmly turned down. I can't afford to give money to someone who just wants to gamble. I have children to take care of. Noah's words were completely reasonable. Eventually, Liam and Ava couldn't stop gambling, and their debts increased. Once, I passed by their house and saw a scary-looking person demanding money. In the end, my words didn't reach them. It's regrettable, but Liam's future is no longer my concern. I've moved from that house and haven't given Liam my new contact information, so there's no future involvement. Somewhere in my heart, I wonder if cutting ties with Liam was heartless, but it wasn't the wrong decision. If I had continued to indulge them under the guise of family, I would have been robbed of all my savings. I refuse to live such a life.